are yours truly's. Appeon makes no warranty of any kind, either express or implied, including but not limited to the implied warranties of merchantability, fitness for particular purpose, or non-infringement. Appeon assumes no responsibility for errors or omissions which are solely mine. So the session agenda. We'll review the PowerClient project itself, then we'll move on to the key technology, the Cloud Application Launcher, its configuring and publishing process, and then more on the launcher and how it's deployed to the client. The CAL, the 2022 enhancements, boy, it is a celebration, having worked with the Cloud App Launcher in 2021, and it is so much of a pleasure these days now that 2022 is out. So, I've been around PowerBuilder for a little while, since 1OB. I've been a technology evangelist, glorified pre-sale software engineer. I've been a certified instructor of PowerBuilder, and I am a charter member, original member of Team PowerSoft and then Team Sybase. I am a member of the Intertech Consulting team. Intertech is the oldest and largest consulting firm specializing in PowerBuilder tech in North America. We focus on architecture, consulting, education, programming, project management, and your soup to nuts enterprise solution needs. Give us a call. So, PowerClient, what is it? Well, it automatically deploys, installs, and updates PowerBuilder applications and their runtimes. It deploys client-server or cloud-native architectures, and it is deployed from a web server. It provides seamless installation even without admin rights. Self-updating with flexible update strategies, it packages all your necessary external files and resources. There is automatic file encryption and integrity verification, and it is compatible with any web server on any operating system. It deploys directly to the staging area that is your web server. This web server that you choose will act as a deployment platform. Or you can do this over FTP, or you can create a zip package or MSI package that you will hand off to a network administrator. So let's talk about the distinction between PowerClient and PowerServer deployed applications. PowerClient, PowerServer, both technologies, they rely on the Cloud Application Launcher. The CAL installs the client layer or tier for both to the user's workstations. The CAL keeps the clients of both deployment types, in sync with the central IIS staging platform. In these two operational contexts, think of IIS really, it's a glorified deployment platform rather than acting as a web server. So, the CAL deployed PowerClient app utilizes local DB interfaces to connect directly to the data repositories. It is still very much a client-server application. It's just the deployment mechanism is now very different. The CAL deployed PowerServer application utilizes a server-based web API, .NET API layer to connect indirectly to the data repositories. So, the Cloud App Launcher itself automatically gets installed on the user's machines. Thereafter, once installed, it can install and update multiple PowerBuilder applications. And here, for your reference, is a bibliography once you're ready to go in depth. So, the PowerClient project properties. Let's talk about them. We will review them during the demo, but here's the context. Let's frame it. The project properties are general, you'll be familiar with that. The libraries, you'll be familiar with that as well. There's going to be the opportunity to be able to load in external file resources, and also identify the runtime and configure that. There is also, as you had for client server, for regular executable projects, a signing capability, as well as being able to execute stuff after the installation before the application starts up for the first time or even each time. But the meat of the matter, the keystone of this, is the client deployment property sheets in the client deployment tab page of the project. So the PowerClient project, client deployment, the web server configuration and selection you can choose from direct to server deployment, or you can create a deployment package to hand off to your administrators in the form of executables or zip files or even MSIs. So the web server configuration can be local, especially for prototyping purposes. You can also map a network drive to a remote server and have it act as if it were local, or you can define remote platform profiles and deploy it via FTP. Now, to be able to configure the Cloud App Launcher, you'll first, on the web server profile response window, you'll click on that Upload Cloud App Launcher command button, and it will open up this response window, and you'll be able to make those modifications, those selections. Note, and we'll go over this during the demo, note that you have the opportunity to select from the multiple launcher profiles that you will predefined. And in this case, note the suffix public in parentheses. Now, the CAL's profile is defined on the developer's workstation. CAL profiles may only be created. At the present time, CAL profiles that already exist cannot be edited. The profile definition then creates and generates the CAL package, and we see some examples here. And the CAL package is then, at your request, the developer, it's uploaded to an instance of IIS. One or more PowerClient deployed apps can then be uploaded to that same instance of IIS. And then, from the user's side of the fence, with a URL to that IIS instance that is suffixed by the web application that you've just uploaded, the user takes that URL and invokes it from a local browser instance, and they will connect to that PowerBuilder app package and access the CAL. The CAL automatically installs itself on the user's workstation. If it's not already there, it will detect whether it exists on that user's workstation, and then the installed CAL installs and updates PowerClient deployed PowerBuilder application. So let's go to the demo and see it in action. Let's roll that beautiful bean footage. Okay, this is going to be not quite a soup to nuts demonstration, but what we want to do is to give you a look-see at the full scope of developing a project that allows you to deploy your PowerBuilder application using PowerClient to IIS, and then configure IIS so that it can be distributed to your 7,000 or 7,000 user base without administrative rights. First thing I should let you know is I have the PowerBuilder IDE open here, and I configured my shortcut in the taskbar and its properties in advanced to make sure that I always run this as administrator when I'm dealing with PowerClient or PowerServer projects. In order to deploy to IIS, you'll need to be running as administrator. That is the context right now for this entire demo and the IDE usage. All right, so let's go ahead and open up my PowerClient project that I already have created. And just as a review, you'll go into the new menu item and choose PowerClient. So let's go through the quickly go through the familiar tab pages, property sheets. For just a client-server application, this should look fairly familiar. So here's our general properties. Everybody should be fairly familiar with this. I've chosen full, and I've chosen 32-bit for deployment for this demonstration's sake. And for the libraries, there's just the single library. And yeah, I just utilized PowerBuilder's ability to generate a template file, and that's going to be good enough for our academic demonstration purposes. Now for external files, these are the external files that you're going to be deploying with your PowerBuilder application. The files can be preloaded as compressed packages, they can be preloaded in uncompressed format, and they can also be images and videos that are dynamically loaded. Note that you can also tell the project and PowerClient to register your DLLs and OCXs. And there we are. There's that interface. And also decide how you should manage the INI configuration for the users, whether it's going to overwrite the update, merge, or don't update at all. Let me go ahead and just add a gratuitous file. And I'll pick one arbitrarily. And that's how it'll appear. And these resources will be, and the resources subfolder and its subfolder structure, that's entirely mine. So here you go. All your external resources for your application, DLLs, third-party stuff, define it here. And the runtime, I have much too much selected right now. It's the typical deployment, but for the runtime, you will not need every single one of these database client interfaces, of course. And if you do choose to pursue signing, that is available as well. And for startup, here's going to be the URL that your users will utilize. What you're going to do is somehow get this URL to the users before they actually run your PowerBuilder application deployed as PowerClient for the first time. This is their bootstrap. Once they connect to IIS, and you can define it as you want. You could name it Fred's Screen Door Company for what it's worth, but this is where you get to define that. And note that you can define what shortcuts are going to be created by PowerClient on the user's workstations. But let's get to the meat of the matter. Well, just to say, for this demonstration's purposes, by the way, yes, we'll be utilizing the local host web server, my local IIS instance. But here's, for my money, the meat of the matter. This is the engine, the technology, the platform, whatever you want to call it, that enables PowerClient deployment of your PowerBuilder application. So we're going to use our local server. And here's the server configuration. It looks like you can have multiples here, but you can only have one local profile. The others that are available, you can pursue, instead of local, you could map a network drive to get to something that is not local across the network. You can also define to be able to deploy the PowerClient application using FTP if you wish. So here's where you would actually define that. Just so we don't consume too much time, this, as I said earlier, will not quite be soup to nuts as far as the demonstration is concerned. And what we can do is go into the edit, and I can test the file path to make sure it's accessible, and because I'm running as administrator, I can actually access that. So here we are. All right, cancel. And what I want to do is to I'll go back to server configuration. So what we need to do, and momentarily I'm going to go over to, let's see, I'm going to show you my IIS repository, the www root folder, in fact. So here's inetpub, here's www root, and note there is next to nothing here. We'll keep an eye on that and return here in just a bit. Go back to PowerBuilder, go back to server configuration on the client deployment tab page of my PowerClient project. And we need to upload the Cloud App Launcher to IIS so that it can then be downloaded to each user's workstations. That Cloud App Launcher will reach out to IIS, which is just in our context here, going to be a glorified staging area or file server, as you will, for the distribution of the PowerBuilder application. So let's go ahead and configure this tech. Right now, we're going to deploy to my local directly, and we're going to utilize one of the potentially multiple launcher profiles. Now, word to the wise here, well, by the way, I've chosen to upload both 32-bit and 64-bit runtimes just because, but we'll be utilizing just the 32-bit in this context for the demo. Launcher profiles, you can have multiple here, but you can only create them at the present time in PowerBuilder 2021 and 2022. You cannot edit existing Cloud App Launcher, or CAL, profiles. You can only create them and accumulate them, so perhaps that will be a future enhancement. So let's go ahead and click on Create, and we'll see that I've configured mine this way. We'll talk about the public version. Very, very powerful enhancement. We'll talk about that in detail later on in the presentation and a subsequent demo. But right now, let's just go with the middle-of-the-road standard version, standard way of being able to distribute my PowerBuilder, my Power Client distributed PowerBuilder application. So here I'm going to just issue the profile name utilizing the CAL and just suffixing it with the version of the runtime. And it's going to deploy my Cloud App Launcher as the developer, my developer profile. This is where it will land. From that location, when you say to upload your Cloud App Launcher to IIS, the profile will go into this local directory to upload it to IIS. So here we are. You have a description, you have the product name available that will appear to the user, the title of the actual windows that your user is going to see when the CAL is doing its job, the icon in the title bar, the main heading, and these 3 image files. You can actually define them here. Let's go to advanced options. And here is the context of the user's workstations. Now, the standard deployment capability here, the standard version, auto-install to the local user folders, this will be wherever the environmental variable for the user's app data, hidden app data folder exists, and it will be put into the PBApps subdirectory of app data. And where the launcher will be installed, now that was for the PowerBuilder applications themselves. Now the app launcher itself, which will be resident on each user's workstation, will be deployed to the local app data folder and labeled as I have displayed here. And for signing, we won't go into the signing capability. That's an entire session by itself. And since I've already created, I'll just click Close here. And now what I want to do, and just a reminder, my www root is next to empty. What I'm now going to tell PowerBuilder to do is to upload the Cloud App Launcher. And this will take a while, so I'll edit out this minute or 2 that it takes to be able to achieve the result. And PowerBuilder reports success. Now, folks, you won't be doing this all that often, uploading the Cloud App Launcher, that is. When will you be actually performing this particular task? You may decide to switch from the default user-specific deployment over to a public, or more likely, you're actually going to only do this when you and your team are deciding to utilize a more advanced runtime version of PowerBuilder, a more advanced version of the runtime. That's done, but let's go ahead and trust but verify. And so here we see the Cloud App Launcher has arrived in my IIS repository. And yeah, so here's the Cloud App Launcher itself. It has arrived as an EXE and or an MSI, and that's what will be downloaded to the user's workstations for installation purposes. And we also see the runtime repository here. And if we accumulate more than one runtime, we will see a roster here instead of a single entry. So, success. All right. So we're done with the Cloud App Launcher. And for my money at this point, we are done with configuring our Power Client project. Let me go ahead and just save early, save often. There we go. So what I want to do now is to be able to deploy this 1.01 version of my very sophisticated and mission-critical application. Let's go ahead and come up to the title bar here and choose Build and Deploy, Power Client Project. And that's done. All right, very good. Let's go ahead and verify out in the IIS file. repository. And here, in fact, is my PowerBuilder application deployed with PowerClient. Let's just browse what's in here, and we see here's the 1.01 version of the application, along with some other metadata that's necessary. And here we have the one PBD, etc., etc. All right, so there it is, and keep your eye on the birdie. We'll return here in just a bit. So now what I want to do is, remember our Startup tab page? A lazy programmer is a good programmer. Let me just get this URL into clipboard. Now this URL, as I'll reiterate, you're going to get this to your users in some way, shape, or form. This is their bootstrap for the first time that they wish to install your PowerBuilder application. It may already exist on their workstations, but this is the first time they're going to get the PowerClient distributed version of it. So let me go ahead and minimize, and I'll open up my Chrome instance, and I'll access that URL, hit enter. I'll immediately minimize the browser instance, and you'll see what will appear, what the users will witness. Now this can be customized by you and your team. The appearance of this window, the title bar page, but here is our progress being displayed. And those of you who are looking closely, we saw our application icon appear. And there it is. And let's go ahead and look at our mission critical about window. Note the background color. I've set it to silver, right, in this 1.01 version. Okay, so you and your team have been going through X, Y, and Z for days, for weeks, for months, and it's time to be able to distribute that enhanced version of the application to your users. How do we do that? Let's return to the PowerBuilder IDE and that PowerClient project. And what I'm going to do is first modify the About window in, yes, a gratuitous fashion. Let's go ahead and do something that's just visually distinctive so our hindbrains retain it. And let's change the back color to something really aesthetic and soothing like lime. And I'll save. And I'll close the painter. I'll go over to the the client deployment tab page of the PowerClient project, and I will manually increment the deployment version. Now, later on in this presentation, I'll talk about CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous development, that you can pursue for PowerClient or PowerServer applications. And that will be utilizing PBAutoBuild. And we'll talk about the 2022 enhancement, two of them that are among the multiples that are available for Cloud App Launcher. And we'll talk about my two favorite. I will showcase those for you. But do put a pin in this for later. But yes, I'm here statically, manually incrementing the deployment version. And you note that you can also enforce at any point a minimum compatible version. In other words, the user, you may choose to have them prompted when there is a new version to download. They may choose to refuse. You may prevent them from refusing that by saying that there's going to be a minimum version. So they'll say, okay, sorry, Charlie, you're just going to have to wait until you're ready to upgrade, and then we'll actually allow you to run the application again. Who knows? Middle tier modifications, database tier modifications that require the presentation layer to be updated. All right, so we've saved this, and let's go ahead and deploy once more. Okay, that's done. Let me take off my developer hat and put on my user hat. So my user comes in the next morning, or whenever it is, and they will choose to execute the shortcut. And lo and behold, yes, the PowerClient tech platform notifies the user that there is an upgraded version. I will choose yes as the user. And again, you can customize these windows and images. And me as the user, I'll go to Help and About. And there we see that to, 1 or 100,000 users, this modification has actually arrived. It is a fully featured presentation layer, almost like a client-server application. In fact, it is utilizing with Power Client, as opposed to PowerServer, it is using local database interfaces to be able to access that. So it is, in fact, arguably a client-server application, but it's used the cloud to be able to distribute itself to your users without needing administrative rights. Okay, and for the curious among us, let's just go back to my user app data, and we'll go to Users, John Strano, App Data, Roaming, and here's our PBApps folder for our user. Now there can be multiple PowerBuilder applications here, of course, so let's go into those applications, and we see here is the local host for my Gen app via Power Client application, along with the current runtime. Right now I only have one runtime that's necessary for my applications, and that's the 1878. All right. And just as a last little academic curiosity being satisfied, here is where I define that my Cloud App Launcher installer as the developer. This is my developer's profile for the Cloud App Launcher installer. And here, the runtime version. And here's today's installer profile. And this is, in fact, what was uploaded to the IIS instance. Okay, back to the presentation. Okay, let's talk Turkey. What about those 2022 enhancements to the CAL? The Cloud App Launcher, well, it's been refactored to remove unnecessary complications and simplify the end user's experience. And in version 2022, the developer no longer gets or needs to choose the launcher mode with background service or as an application. It's really handled now internally by the program. And now, the magic for virtualization accommodation. It really does seem magic considering what I need to go through to be able to provide that workaround in 2021. Before PowerBuilder 2022, we didn't have the following enhancement. Yes, I will tell you what my workaround was in PowerBuilder 2022 that you can pursue. But in version 2022, the launcher can be configured in two modes, either standard version for each particular user that's currently logged in, or versus the public version for all users of the workstation. The standard version, no administrator rights are needed during installation. It's automatically installed to the user folder and used by the current user only. The public version can be used by all users on the same machine, or, more to my point in my recent past, a core virtualized desktop or workstation. Think about Citrix, or think about VMware. Your LAN administrators, those who are responsible for providing support and configuration, they may very well want to be able to create a core or template virtual machine that can be distributed to all users that is then customized for each user. But it has to be installed by an administrator. Now, the user is able to install the Cloud App Launcher to a specified directory if the developer has specified or allowed the user to specify a non-default location when creating the launcher. You, the developer, are able to specify the launcher exe file properties like file description, product name, images to show to the user during the running of the launcher. And more under the hood enhancements, Launcher 22 does not require a loopback address to be enabled. The running of it is compatible with a typical customer's corporate firewall, security practices, and browser settings. Both Launcher 2021 and Launcher 2022 can coexist on the same machine, instead of prompting users to upgrade the launcher from the previous version. And now, a demo of those customizations in 2022. All right, now let's look at one of my two favorite enhancements to PowerBuilder 2022, just because, selfishly, it really now solves a problem that I had to find a workaround for earlier this year. Here's our PowerClient project. Let's go into the server configuration. And upload Cloud App Launcher. And note that I have selected a launcher profile that is suffixed with the word public, parenthetically. Let's go in and look at how that is configured. We'll click on Create. And notice that in this case, I have alternatively selected public version. And note in the parentheses, will be manually installed to the program files folder. Here's the use case. I had been creating PowerClient, PowerServer deployments for a customer, but they wanted to not install it per user directly onto the user's workstations. They were utilizing virtual machines. They wanted to configure a core or templated virtual machine that would be configured for all users in their enterprise. And I had to find a workaround that I will talk to you about later on and when we return to the presentation. But I had to solve it for myself to be able to install all of this Cloud App Launcher's deployed stuff in the all users area of that virtual machine that was acting as a virtual workstation. This now obviates that need. Let's take a look at it. And notice I have selected public version, and then all of a sudden we do have some additional targeting capabilities. Note the fully qualified paths down there in the lower portion of this window. But what I'm going to do is to go to advanced options, and this is the money shot. Note that it doesn't have to be in the app data portion for each user. It can actually be specified to put it into a statically defined area. Mind you, you can also put in environmental variables that are placeholders for alternate locations that you define in the user's workstations. But note that here's the application path where all PowerBuilder applications utilizing this profile will be installed, and also where the Cloud App Launcher will be installed on the user's workstation. It does not have to be in that roaming portion of app data. And oh, by the way, I may have neglected to point out that you can allow the user to change the path for either one of these two, even with the standard version. Most customers that we have run across don't want to have the user possess that kind of discretion. They want more control over that. But I did want to point this out here at the 11th hour. So let's go over to the File Explorer and see how this actually manifests itself. So here, more importantly, here are all the PowerBuilder applications, the multiple potential applications. Here it's just one for the demonstration purposes, localhost, and here's a PBD. And here's the corresponding runtimes, and I only have one runtime right now. And over here, I also have the Cloud App Launcher that is public now. It is, I've named it and made an attempt to name it intuitively. And here's all that stuff that is the client-side Cloud App Launcher. Let's open up my favorite class definition. And you see, I chose teal during my own technical rehearsal. Let's choose something else. So let's choose sky, just because. And we'll save it. And we'll close the window painter. And we'll go ahead and build and deploy. And I'll minimize the IDE. And we'll go back over here to the File Explorer, and we'll see that it has been updated. And we'll, as the user, putting our user hat on, will run the application, which will force it to update. And we'll go to the About window, and we see now that the window has been updated, albeit to a location on the user's workstation that we define that can potentially be for all users. All right, let's go back to the presentation. And when you're ready to get into the Cal in depth, here's a short bibliography to be able to get you started on that learning curve. So let's connect the dots for continuous integration and continuous development. Utilizing PowerClient and PBAutoBuild, this is quite possible. What you're going to utilize is the PowerClient project's ability to export all that we looked at in the property sheets in the project object. It can all be exported to a JSON text file. Then using that payload, you'll run PBAutoBuild, which can be invoked from DevOps or TFS or any other build agent that will run that job off of your, let's say, a Git platform. So I, as the developer, can go into the project object for the PowerClient project, and I can choose to click on this toolbar icon. It is available from the textual version of the menu as well. But you can export that build file as a JSON text file. And yes, that JSON file will then be utilized by PBAutoBuild. And here's one example that I pulled from a customer that I did this for earlier this year. So let's say that you have an SCC platform. Let's say that it's TFS or DevOps utilizing Git. And once there's a merge or pull request on those branches, let's say that you have defined the pipeline to be able to then invoke a job, which will access an agent that will then execute that build. And part of the batch file that you tell it to execute will be a line where you have PBAutoBuild 2022 invoked. And here are three of its command line arguments. For the JSON file, what is the payload? For the log of what happens, as well as the error log argument. And wow, this is the second of my two favorite enhancements as far as CI/CD, PowerClient, and PBAutoBuild. What we used to have to do before 2022 was we had to do things like invoke PowerShell to dynamically modify an exported PowerClient project JSON file for versioning. Now, yes, you could have statically at design time incremented the deployed version as you saw me do during the demo. But in a CI/CD environment, you really would like this to be done dynamically. And here we are. We have these new command line parameters, arguments that can actually act as variables in your, let's say, DevOps pipeline build job. What did we do before we had these two enhancements in 2021 and earlier? And we needed to be done for all users. So what did I need to do earlier this year with 2021 when we needed that core template virtual machine to be created and then distributed to all users? We needed to make sure that everything was installed in the registry for all users, not just the current user. PowerClient 2021 and the Cloud App Launcher utilize under the hood, unseen for the most part by us, the user shell folders that are defined as entries in the registry. What do we do? What did I do to get around this? Well, the recipe was to, yes, access the registry and to export the branch that contains the user shell folder values for app data and local app data. And then I exported the original branch of the registry to preserve those original values. Then I saved an altered registry branch for user shell folders, which contained the desired target location for installation. And then from the batch file, I invoked the reg file with the modified values for the actual desired target, let my Cal install the application for the first time, and then I invoked the original reg file branch to restore those entries for the original user shell folders. Now, folks, this is very powerful. For my part, for this particular use case, for this case study, it was very much a one-off. They'll only do this one time every time they needed to create this virtual machine template or core virtual machine. But it was fairly powerful. Now we don't have to worry about that thanks to the enhancements that we've already reviewed. And then, of course, the administrators made that core template VM accessible to the entire user base. Okay, thanks for your time and your attention. And it is now time to remind you to go out and make use of the treasure, the boon that is the Appeon community. Talk to that future version of you. Let's say you're experiencing a problem today, but there is another version of you who solved that problem 6 months ago. This is how you can find those folks and get that kind of advice. Thank you for your time and attention. And now it's time for Q&A.